Good afternoon. My name is Varuni Kasawan, and I am a Regional Vice President for Mohawk, and I'm also a Board of Director for Cornet New England. Welcome to today's program on the future of work and mobility planning. Before we get started, I just have a few announcements I'd like to make on behalf of the chapter. We've got some exciting programs coming up on March 3rd from the Cornet New England's Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity series. We have a program called Neurodiversity in the Workplace, and that's from 12 to 1:15. On March 12th, please save the date for Career Strategies and Development alumni event, and that's from 12 to 1. And then on March 25th, please do not miss our annual meeting that's coming up, and it's from 5:30 to 7. You can register on our website for any of these events. And please join the conversation on social media. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Stephen Smith from North Star. We'd also like to thank our corporate partners and our sponsors. Without our partners and our sponsors, we would not be able to bring you programs like today. So these are our corporate partners, our platinum sponsors, and our gold sponsors. We'd also like to keep this program today very interactive, so please feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A window on your Zoom dashboard. And now I'd like to introduce Jonathan Keith. He's our Real Estate Program Director from Boston University. He's our moderator today, and he will be kicking off the program and introducing you to the speakers. Jonathan?
Yes, hey, thank you, Varuni, and I guess good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for everybody for taking time out to attend our workshop. I'm John Keefe, and I'm the director of there's my cuckoo clock. I guess you get to hear all the fun things in Zoom calls. So I'm the director of the BU program for real estate studies. I teach one of the classes. There are about 30 classes in our program. We offer 3 certificates in real estate finance, and facilities management. And right now, all our classes are remote, which is convenient for a lot of folks who had trouble getting into Boston. So and the classes will start again in April. So hopefully we'll see you in one of those classes. I'm also a commercial real estate consultant. I primarily focus on occupiers, and I typically help with strategy, help create and implement real estate strategies. So let's get going. So well before the pandemic, I'm going to introduce our speakers here in just a moment. I'm sorry. So well before the pandemic, commercial real estate people knew that utilization was not ever high. We saw a growing sort of disconnect between the worker and the workplace. You walk through the space at any given time, you'd be lucky to see 50% utilization on a good day, right? For most companies, this was an informal remote work. People would take time off, go do their things. But what we really didn't do for the most part, however, is get aggressive about eliminating waste and really right sizing or downsizing our portfolio to be very, very in line with the number of people there. We kind of, I won't say we're lax about it, but most companies didn't want to necessarily go into a very hard hoteling or hybrid work, mobile work. And I think that was for a couple of reasons. One, the real estate was never that expensive compared to the labor. So, I don't think it really struck everybody as a huge problem. And of course, the HR people liked the fact that you could come in and have your seat, and we weren't forcing you again to do hoteling and assign seats like that. But so anyway, space center utilization, well-known secret, but kind of not many people did much about it. Then along came the pandemic and everybody started working remotely, and lo and behold, the world did not come to an end. And in shrinking revenues, the C-suite sort of woke up and discovered that operationalizing remote work could really greatly reduce the real estate spend. Some went so far to say, hey, we're never coming back to the office. We're going to remote all the time forever. We're going to save a bunch of money on real estate. So now a year later, this great work from home experiment, we're here today to look at again the future of work, which we seem to look at every 10 years or thereabouts. Many will say that the pandemic has accelerated the future of work and remote work, and that certainly is true. and certainly has demonstrated what most of us knew to be true. However, I think there have been, a variety of second and third order impacts that I'm not sure we would have appreciated a year ago. Employees are complaining of isolation, lack of training, mentoring, along with general deterioration of mental health. Um, Creation and collaboration have been stifled by the bonds of two-dimensional interactions, and leadership has seen the erosion of culture and community. However, we did get to see our colleagues, kids, dogs, and cats, so that was kind of a plus. Um, but depending on where you look, the research on remote work is overwhelmingly pointing to a strong desire for people to return to the office and get back to working together. So what seemed like the panacea a year ago is starting to be recognized as a bit of a problem. So how do we balance the conflicting goals of the workplace of the future? How do we obtain cost savings while enhancing employee experience? How do we foster collaboration while achieving wellness and work-life balance? How do you attract and retain workers if there's no place to attract them to? At the end of the day, how do we create the physical, social, technological, and psychic environment to unfetter worker creativity and productivity? It is generally accepted that workplace of the future requires a coordination of many elements, including finance, space design, HR, change management, technology, engineering. But today we're going to just try to focus on primarily two areas of technology and HR, and and we have a great team to talk about that. So we're going to have a brief presentation by Rich Bertina and Scott Silva from Fresenius. You see their titles there. Their bios were available on the line, so I'm not going to walk through those again. After Rich and Scott speak, Bethany Davis and Francesco Ferretti from the Boston Consulting Group are going to share a couple slides on what they're doing, and then we're just going to have a conversation. So if you'll bear with us for a few minutes, we're going to go through a few slides, sort of set the context of where we're going, and then again, open up for questions. You've got the Q&A box on your Zoom calls, and Jane Sullivan is going to help keep that organized, and I'm going to try to manage the slides from here. And so off we go. Rich, Scott, take it away.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you join us and for us to be able to share some of our experiences that we've gone through at Fresenius and continue to go through. I would echo what Jonathan referenced there. We all kind of intuitively know as real estate experts that we don't necessarily utilize our space, our capacity that we have as much as we could. We also know the challenges with having to convince management of that unless it's part of some kind of cost transformation program, et cetera. I'm happy to say that as a backdrop, if you see this slide here, if you look at the left side here, we were really observing productivity concerns and space concerns, meaning that we had some large offices. Fresenius had some large overhead offices as well as thousands of clinics. Pretty much we were looking at specifically the overhead offices and particularly the headquarters location, which tends to be sensitive. And it was pretty obvious to us that there were a few things that we needed to do. We needed to rationalize and not necessarily downsize, but right size what we needed for corporate headquarters, and then use that as a step and repeat process if we can do it in a way that has real data behind it and we can make a real business case across the North America portfolio. I'm happy to say that as we get into this more, we can talk more about how we actually are doing that, and we're in actually full stride here. But also our need for not only optimizing office space, but the whole portfolio, and then building a roadmap so we understand our is map and we understand our to be map. Maybe it's a 3 to 5 year roadmap that we put in place, is something that we took on initially 2 Januaries ago. So people hadn't heard of COVID-19 before that. Everything these days, that's what's in the front of everyone's mind. But back then, that was not even a notion, right? It was barely thought about. And it was actually before January that we started having discussions about how do we think about optimizing the portfolio. And it became obvious to us that we needed to leverage technology capability. And also, and some of you know this from working closely with me, I'm big on partnering, and I'm also big on tapping external resources. and developing close partnerships with teams that bring real expertise and experience. The trap that you typically can fall into with, particularly with a large company like Fresenius that has operated for decades a certain way and has legacy practices, is you have insular thinking. And although you do have some clear professionals and experts in some areas, you risk not taking advantage and leveraging free thinking and open thinking that you can easily tap into the industry with. So it was important for us to use technology and industry skills. And the way that we did that was we went through a vetting process and developed what we called a corporate core team. This core team was built up of 5 different external partners, and it's a hybrid team that ties in with the internal real estate and facilities teams. And as a collective team, we've been able to tactically go through the steps that we need to go through to make sure that we're making progress, but also strategically think about this as an iterative process over time versus an event. Many corporations, and I'm sure many of you have this experience, I know I have treated things like this as an event. It's a transformation exercise and then it's over with. And our view on this is that this never ends, because what we need to do is be able to get our arms around the business and around the right sizing of the portfolio and throttle it up and down to meet the needs of the business. And that's been one of the selling features and one of the value add features that we've had in our discussions with executives. So developing this hybrid core team, getting technology partners on board and expertise, and then having fact-based discussions was allowing us to really have the right discussions up through the CEO of the company. And of course, many of you understand and have, I'm sure, dealt with in the years trying to sell in through levels, and getting tops down endorsement is something that we've been able to do through this exercise. And we were very fortunate to be able to start pre-pandemic. As Jonathan said, a lot of companies have looked at it over the years, but us being able to start pre-pandemic and then keep stride throughout the time while the offices are empty and continue to do work on obviously not measuring utilization while people are out of the office, but design, a number of other processes that Scott will talk about, and I'll be happy to talk about also further into the presentation. But that's kind of the backdrop. We started pre, and then we started to form this team, and we started to put in place all the processes that we thought we needed that would continually evolve for us to continue to manage the North America portfolio most proactively, much more so than ever thought about previously in our regards. So I'll turn it over to Scott to talk through the technology partners and more of the elements of this. Scott?
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, I just want to add to the backdrop as well. Fresenius has been slow to evolve in respect to how we office. Assigned seats, nameplates, and oversized workstations are the norm in most of our overhead facilities. And thought of a more flexible work environment, desk sharing, or even working from home made every business unit owner cringe. One of the challenges we also faced was a lot of legacy practice in how we manage real estate, as well as being siloed by divisions across the entire North American portfolio. Rich and I believe that to achieve true optimization and efficient utilization, we need to push for change in how we manage real estate and break down the misconceptions of how we office effectively. So in order to do that, we needed to incorporate new technologies, one being an IWMS tool, and the other sensors that can support our proposed future of work program and arm us with clear and factual data to drive that change. The systems we chose were provided by iOffice and VergeSense, respectively, and we've also partnered with Fort Point Project Management to assist with our implementation of this system. The iOffice system was the first piece of the puzzle we needed to catalog and understand what the portfolio actually looks like and establish our baseline. Not only were we siloed in how we manage real estate, but also in the tools we use to do so. So we've since streamlined our process by incorporating other facets of the iOffice system, such as the service request and visitor modules, insights dashboards, Hummingbird mobile app, and the reservation module. For our proposed future of work, the reservations module and Hummingbird app are crucial, as our plan is to move the entire North American portfolio to a flexible work environment. And this is a dramatic change for FMCNA. So step one was to gain support of this crazy idea with the executive leadership team. And since doing so, we've built the reservation tool within iOffice to support the change, which was a learning experience for me, to say the least, as I've never participated in a flexible environment. But fortunately, iOffice and FortPoint were there to hold my hand through the process. Secondly, we piloted a sensor installation at one of our sites in Waltham to test the effectiveness of the data that we could pull, and we're very pleased with the results. The data yielded a much different picture than what we had achieved in the past with our old process of observation, network hits, card access data, etc. So now the plan for us is to install sensors in our sites that are scheduled to be retained and monitor continuously to ensure we're current with the changing business needs and space usage. And we make a point to call out that the sensor installations aren't an event; they're rather a continuous process to optimize our real estate over time. One of the many benefits of partnering with iOffice and VergeSense is the systems natively integrate. So data pulled from the sensors ties nicely within the iOffice dashboards for a more robust report out on utilization. So meaning we have a one-stop shop essentially to review and monitor both reservation and utilization data. And again, it's fact-based data as well as real-time, which has proven to be far more effective in driving change. Previously, before incorporating these technologies, every business unit owner meeting that we had was the same. The same responses came back. I need this much space for my staff and growth. We're in the office every day, 100%. My people need assigned space. My team isn't effective working remote, etc. But you get the point. But now with the combination of the right data sets from the sensors and even surveys, we can have more intellectual conversations with business unit owners where we can show them a true picture of utilization. And so far, so good, as none of the business unit owners have stood up and said, no, thank you. I prefer my old, inefficient, less productive, and more expensive ways yet anyway.
Yeah, and Scott, I would add to that also that one of the compelling arguments when we first started this was when they were in the "this is impossible, we can't be remote" and so forth back in those days. One of the compelling arguments was this is not being prescribed by facilities, real estate, corporate. This is us partnering with you, but we need you, and this is to the VPs of the BUs. We need you to be intellectually honest about what you really believe you need, so that we can design around your needs and support you. And that was a big deal, as opposed to what they had been used to in the past was something like, oh, okay, I guess we're supposed to go this way, and then immediately resist. And that's exactly the environment that we were not creating. We were making sure that they knew that it was collaborative and it was to help them be productive.
Yep. And again, my last thought really on it is basically the data that we can supply now opens up opportunities to better partner with the business unit owners and make thoughtful business decisions for the organization and incorporate new design that supports collaboration, creates a better employee experience, and is efficient while doing so. And then now COVID-19 comes along, and next slide. I'll pass to you, Rich, for this.
Well, so, there's this notion of it's impossible for us to do that is now, it's a reality. And so it's not part of your team. It's not, well, let's just take this group or that group. Everyone is working at home. So the fact that that's forced has allowed us to really accelerate a number of things. Now, back when we were starting, in parallel, HR had a work stream going, as did IT, with regard to work from home, but it was kind of a soft pedal process. But we've obviously needed to accelerate that. And if there's any silver lining of COVID-19, at least from a real estate perspective, I wouldn't even call that a silver lining because we don't need a pandemic, but we were able to just benefit from the acceleration that was required from that. But the fact that we were well positioned and continue to be with partners like Margulies, Prusi, with partners like FortPoint and iOffice, Cressa, PES. These guys have all been in meetings with us throughout this whole time when we've been out of office to make sure that we're staying in stride, so that when the executive team, I won't say wakes up because that'll be rude, but when they start to, it goes from their head to their gut and they start to realize we really need to do something here. We're already positioned with alternatives, right? We've had numbers of discussions and we're kind of watching the decisions get made at the executive levels where they're saying, no, we're not going to do this, we're going to do that. And then all of a sudden they start to see some of the data that we're well positioned with because of all the work that we're doing. And it's helping them internalize really where we need to head. And it also emphasizes this whole need for optimizing the portfolio and the implementation of technology. So as they're learning, and they're still learning, the thought that there aren't reserved offices, there's reservation capability, but also that we'll be continually monitoring and tying in sensors to our IWMS platform so that we can continue to show heat maps and look at particularly the larger facilities and make sure that we're scaling those up and down. That's very attractive, as you might imagine, to executive management, and it's something that they're really latching onto.
So as Rich pointed out, COVID-19 did have one positive effect, and it was that it made everyone aware from the CEO down that employees can be equally and in many cases more effective while working from home. So for us, in order to pull together our real estate strategy, we created a workflow starting with capacity demand needs. After many months of working from home, HR and real estate partnered up to create a survey. And this was a game changer for us in real estate. We asked 13,000 employees pointed, simple questions such as, can you work from home? Do you want to work from home? And how many days per week would you like to come into the office? There were additional questions, but these gave us the data that we wanted. The employees had spoken, and it was loud and clear that they're effectively working remote and wanted to continue to do so. So next we analyzed the feedback site by site across the entire North American portfolio. Now we had definition around capacity demand for each location and could use that information to formulate scenarios to better optimize the portfolio. Working with our core team partners, Margulies, Peruzzi, and 4Point, we dropped the capacity demand feedback into our capacity calculators. And this optimization initiative that we have got real very fast. By applying the appropriate, sorry, Rich. Go ahead.
No, what I was going to say, Scott, is why don't you touch on also the tops down versus bottoms up surveys, the flash surveys that you did for cross-checking. That's pretty powerful that people should understand also.
Yeah, so it wasn't just one survey. So HR, yes, they created one. We were able to contribute to that and get some real estate guided questions in there. But we also created a flash survey. So back in, I believe it was November, we collected all the data via HR and through their survey process. And it was good data and it was valuable and it helped us with a starting point. But as we get more fine-tuned into targeting different sites and having scenarios created, we needed to get fresher data now that it's 4 months later. So we put together a flash survey, which we could launch out to all of the employees in that respective site and find out what their direct feedback is 4 months later, real time. And we can use that process going forward continuously to understand the.
Yeah, and let me add a little bit
capture.
with a little less diplomacy than you're providing. So the tops down HR driven survey went to managers and directors and VPs that thought what they needed in certain areas of the portfolio. The flash survey is bottoms up from the FTEs. So you can imagine the differences that you would be getting from managers or directors or VPs that say, we need this much space and we're going to need these many conference rooms, and employees saying, I'm actually pretty good. I only need to go in once a day, et cetera, right? So that contrast really helps us in the discussions that Scott is talking about with the business unit owners. Thanks, Scott.
Yep, sure. So just back to our workflow process, we applied the calculations based on the responses versus the days requested in office, and we saw very quickly the overall square footage numbers dropping and opportunities popping up across the country. These results spawned another round of business unit owner discussions, and the results were dramatically different than the pre-COVID meetings that we had had. I could actually wear my partnering hat and not the helmet for a change. There was a cognitive shift in their feedback. No longer were they guarded or emotional. They were open to new ideas, and many were ahead of the curve in that they had already decided to embrace more of a work from home platform for their teams before we even got to the table. So the idea of assigned space is diminishing, and now they better understand their true needs for space utilization. Now through the FMC 360 process that Rich developed, the full force of the Fresenius Real Estate Services team is empowered to generate thoughtful proposals that are employee needs focused and driving towards a portfolio optimization goal. And we're still working towards that goal, but we're very well positioned with an all-encompassing real estate strategy that will change FMC&A for the better and keep doing so continuously.
Thanks, Scott.
Well, gentlemen, that was great. You know, as I mentioned at the start of this, we're really focusing on technology and HR. There's so much we could talk about, go for days on this topic, but that was really a great overview of the technology that really enabled you to get where you're at and the process you folks went through. So thank you very much, and we'll obviously come back and have, I'm sure, a bunch of questions from the folks on the call or the meeting, whatever we call these things now. So we're going to move on now, talk a little bit more about sort of the HR side of life with Bethany and Francesco. Francesco joins us from Italy, by the way. So these one of the nice things about you know, sort of the evolution to these virtual platforms is that it's not really a surprise that we have colleagues from around the world. So Bethany Davis is the Global Workplace Strategy Director for Boston Consulting Group. And Francesco Ferretti has a new position as the Next Gen Ways of Working Global Senior Manager, which we'll looking forward to hear more about that. So with no further ado, Bethany and Francesco, please let's hear from you guys on what's going on at Boston Consulting Group.
Thank you, Jonathan. And so just as introduction, we have a few slides here that we thought would help to explain a bit of our context. As you may know, that the management consulting industry is highly mobile and has been for many years. And we've been on a journey for about a decade to transform our workplace, to make it more activity-based, and essentially to tie the workplace experience to what our business and people's needs are in their work patterns. But in addition, and some of you may have seen our office that I have the picture of in the background, our Boston office. I know I toured some Cornet people through there a while ago. But now we have some new influences that we're also working with. And Francesco and I are here to tell you a bit of a story about the people, maybe more of the people side of things. We, early in 2020, made a net zero sustainability commitment, which means that our biggest carbon footprint impact is our travel, because we do travel a lot. So that meant that we knew that we would be planning a shift to our travel behaviors. And now, of course, with COVID-19, and as Scott and Rich kind of described, obviously we all know that that's changed a lot of how we work. But we've learned that we can do quite a bit of our work remotely from our clients, and our clients have even learned that we can do some of our work remotely from them. So that has been another influence on the next phase of the evolution of our workplace strategy. And so enter the Next Generation Ways of Working team, which Francesco will tell you about in just a minute, really looking at how do our teams need to work well in this remote hybrid mode, in order to both have the right experience for themselves as professionals, but also to be able to serve our clients well. And all of that is driving the next phase of what we're calling the new reality for our real estate portfolio. At the same time, we had pretty detailed engagement with our leadership. And on the right-hand side, you can see some of the takeaways from that. So for us, affiliation is a really important part of the purpose of the office, and kind of especially when client teams are out with the client, coming back to the office is important to kind of reconnect to the BCG culture. So we see that being very important. In fact, one of the surveys that we've done recently shows that like 80 to 85% of our employees are really looking forward to getting back to the office as soon as they can for that social affiliation kind of connection. Interestingly, at the same time, 85 to 90% of them are saying that they still want the flexibility to work from home. So we know that we're going to be balancing both of those influences, and it changes the purpose of the office really to be the place to come and interact. We know we need to be flexible and continuously evolve. These will not be the only influences on our future plans, but also we know that we can be more efficient about how we use our space, even though we've already been on that journey and taken quite a bit of the excess space out of our portfolio, but we've never had our real estate strategy based solely on cost. It's really been on, again, matching the experience that our people have in the office to what they most need. It just happens that the efficiency is like a natural outcome of some of the changes that we've been making in the workplace. So with the topic of how are our teams working, I'll hand it over to Francesco, who will take you through the next couple slides on how our teams are working and what we're learning about how we need to support them.
Yeah, many thanks, Bethany. Building on what you just said, I think maybe it's worth highlighting that our approach in this phase, in this journey, as Bethany called it, it's really to provide the teams and not only the single employees with guidance in order to enable them to make the location choice that is fundamentally conducive to create value. And this choice and these models that you can see here in these slides, fundamentally the choice of one of those models relies on three drivers: the type of project in which the team is engaged on. There are projects that are more people or relation intensive, projects in which the team is comprised of people that are more client facing, and people instead that, for example, do more coding, therefore they need more home or office time. And also, of course, is dependent on the level of restrictions that due to the pandemic may be in different locations. So the point is to provide really to our teams some archetypes that, together with the leader of each team and with the client, would enable them to make a conscious choice in terms of best location model. And this is the first aspect, the first fundamental pillar of how we are supporting teams in this journey. The second one is really to have an approach to digital collaboration as a key enabler of teams in remote or hybrid working model. And when I say enabler, I do not mean only an enabler of performance, but also an enabler in terms of employee value proposition, meaning that we try to enable our teams to use digital tools when they are not co-located in order to, yes, produce value, but also care for each other, help each other, and co-create, because we believe that ultimately the value resides in the way people team together, irrespective if they are located together or not. And that's why our approach to digital collaboration is really leveraging business communication platforms for co-creation, project management platform for transparent project management, and enterprise file synchronization platform to ensure zero waste when working together on a same document or on a same product. Having said that, now just a couple of minutes to end on the HR and digital front. If you could kindly go to the next slide, Jonathan. And
I am trying, but my computer is
sorry.
not. Sorry about that. I don't know why it is.
Perfect.
Oh, I know, it's your fade out. There we go. Hold on. I'll fade back in. Here we go. I think we're there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now that I touched upon fundamentally the archetypes in terms of location models and the role of digital collaboration, it's also probably worth spending a couple of minutes on the HR/people team support to our team. While we were implementing those archetypes and those type of guidance, we as people team fundamentally included teams in different regions and different businesses within the Boston Consulting Group in the testing it to ensure that ultimately they were part of the solution. They were part of crafting the solution. And then also we heavily involved different regions and different business in the refinement of the results of those pilots in order to make sure that we could effectively take care of different culture and different needs, as the Boston Consulting Group is a global company. And lastly, right now that we are in the implementation phase in allowing teams to choose one of those models, we are providing teams with what we call performance coaches that ultimately enable the team, and together also the team and the client, to make the choice that is best for them in terms of A, the location model to adopt, and B, how to continuously improve in the way the team given a location model. Maybe I will hand over to you, Bethany, for some closing remarks on this.
Thanks, Francesco. So all of this is an input then to what we need to provide for in the workplace. And Jonathan, it's fading in for us. And you heard Francesco mention a couple of times choice. So we also recognize that this means, and this is not a real floor plan, obviously, this is just an icon, but we need to provide different solutions in the office to help these teams that may be working as a combination of in the office and at the client and at home. We need different ways to connect those people. So we have new kinds of emerging types of team spaces with enhanced technology to be able to support that. We are doing more virtually connected ideation kinds of activities, as well as larger training sessions, those types of things. And we also are looking at, like Fresenius, more of an app-enabled experience for people so that they can know predictably kind of when I come into the office, what will my experience be like? Who else will be there? What do I need to make the most of that time in the office? But it's really very much linked to the work that Francesco and team are doing about these new ways of working, because these different models of client service will shift what happens in our office space. So we've been doing the top things here about more collaborative space and fewer solo desks and convertible offices for a while. Now it's really about making sure that those spaces work in this hybrid working mode as well. So Jonathan, I think that's it for the slides, and happy to jump into questions.
Great, thanks so much, Bethany and Francesco. A lot of information in there that we've just sort of scratching the surface on, I'm sure, but in any event, thank you. So I know there are some questions going, but I thought I'd talk just quickly to Rich and Scott. You said you're going to put in a lot of sensing technology. I think you said you're working with the Verge Sense, and you're going to be continually monitoring, and I don't know if you're monitoring every space in your portfolio or certain spaces. What are you going to do with that information? How are you going to act on that, if you will, versus understanding what happened? But are you doing anything in real time? Are you changing your cleaning habits? Are you changing HVAC operations? What are you doing with this real-time monitoring as you go forward?
You want to start, Rich, or you want me to go?
Go ahead, Scott.
So again, it's Rich highlighted before. This is not an event for us as far as the optimization process. It's a continuous process that we want to continue to monitor real estate. It can get out of control very quickly and grow too far, and we don't want that to happen again, obviously. So in respect to the sensors and what their capabilities are, there's far more reporting features within that we can utilize for both COVID cleaning. So yes, we will apply those to our future changes in space.
Yeah, those were some of the secondary benefits. I think what we're going to find, Jonathan and team, is that we're going to get capacity requirements that we still think are going to be intuitively 50% over what they should be, even with people using their best judgment. And so using sensors in the right locations for us to be strategic, whether that's driven by a hub strategy or wherever we decide to locate most of our overhead employees in different large offices, we'll be able to manage the upsize or downsize of those depending on the attendance, frankly. I think, you know, the legacy practice, as we all know, has been if you have a nameplate on it, the seat is taken, and that's just not the way that we're operating. The biggest hurdle, which isn't a surprise to anyone, is getting people to get that into their head and into their gut. And I think we're probably past the midpoint on that, which is a huge win for us because we're hearing it now trickle down from some of our executives. But there definitely are secondary benefits as Scott, you know, manages in the facility space, the cleaning, the FM piece, all of that will all be impacted by the results that we get from the sensors.
Interesting. So one question that came in from our listening audience, if we call that group, and I think it's interesting. So you've been doing all the sensing technology, and you said at one point you were looking at badge swipes. Did those reinforce each other, or was there a whole new aha that came from like, wow, suppose a million people came in, but nobody's here? How did those align with each other? And is there any takeaways on that?
Yeah, they're dramatically different data sets. You know, badge swipes give you a peak capacity for your building on a daily basis, where the sensors are telling you how the space is actually being utilized, by the minute. So it's a totally different data set and piece of information that we needed, and we didn't really care about how many people came in as much as how long people were in space, how effectively they were using the space.
Yeah, and there's another piece to this I saw that was related to that question that had to do with tying in with the IT infrastructure and so forth. You know, one of the beauties of VergeSense is that they have a wireless solution that doesn't require, you know, they're basically just gathering data that doesn't require any integration. And
Right.
so that allowed us to do a test pilot for several months that really got some traction. And now Scott's done a great job at integrating with IT and with the HR teams to actually have these wired in and think about it in a more permanent solution. But you also could use the wireless solution. And the thing I like about that is you can put it up in literally in a weekend and start monitoring, you know, certain problem spots that you think you have. And we were doing that as pilots, but we're certainly going to be doing that going forward as we
Just
come back to the office.
and to add with the wireless option, I mean, you can take them down and use them in a different building. So it's it's not more money out the door. You're just repurposing the equipment that you have on hand for the ultimate goal.
Another question here is about timelines. It sounds like, you guys, Fresenius, you started this well before COVID started. How long do you think this will take you kind of get fully up and running, if you will?
Yeah, it's a process. We've been at this for, I think, over a year in the planning and just organizing our portfolio and understanding the baseline of what it looks like. And, I probably should have elaborated on our scope, but we're hundreds of sites across North America. So it's not as simple as, handling just Massachusetts, where we have 7 locations. So it's going to be a process. I think we're looking at probably a 5-year plan anyway.
Well, so I think the challenge that we had was bringing the technology in, having the expertise to tie out. For instance, Fort Point showed us some of the traps that you run into with, sometimes there's multiple HR systems and they don't all tie out and blah, blah, blah. And we've been able to do that in parallel with us being out of the office. So we're positioned to move now on a subset of North America that we will just continue to move forward with. The iOffice is loaded, the capability is there. So from a timing perspective, from what we're doing, this is my point earlier, I think that we're in really good position to go. The challenge, frankly, is at the executive level for lots of good reasons, right? I mean, they have to think about perception, they have to think about employee experience, and we think about that also, but they think about it. And so they don't want to move too quickly. There's a question on what you do with your assets and how you manage it and so forth. We're helping them think through that. But frankly, so far, every time they've said, let's do X, we've been able to jump on it and move. And they actually, I think, Scott, they just kind of leapfrogged over the pilot thought. And now we're moving right into future design, as opposed to where we were going to pilot return to work. We're not doing that anymore because the executives now are starting to pick up speed on this, right?
Right, and really the difference between the two is return to work was essentially going back into office the same way we were, but with the reservable platform and the technology incorporated. Future of work for us is the direction we're heading now, incorporates full design, reworking of space, right sizing, and the technology. So it's a great leapfrog for us.
So segueing from, thank you, Scott and Rich. I think I'm seeing a few questions, and I'm curious myself, and with on what I'll call the soft side of all this. So you've talked a lot about sort of the hard elements of it, space, reservations, activities and such. But I was very intrigued with the Boston Consulting Group, especially Francesco, when your change journey slide there, where, and I know you, and this maybe dovetails to one of the questions too about global versus regional, where it seems like, and it was a question I had too, that one size doesn't fit all when you go around the world, right? And for everything from labor laws to cultural stuff to whatever, leadership in particular offices really changes these dynamics. And you have this process about testing, evaluating, and someone asked a question about these performance coaching, which I thought was really unique. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this, this again, soft side of it, but probably maybe more important than the hard side at the end of the day?
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. I will touch briefly on the global versus regional, then go into the performance coaching one. On the global versus regional, I think in terms of global, our approach is that there should be a common understanding of which these archetypes or models are. Also, somehow consistency in the digital platforms that the team use to stay connected while not collocated. And third, there should be an equal level, I would say, of investment in providing teams with the people/HR support through these coaches across the globe. So that's really the global standard. When we go into regional differences, there are several, but just to provide some concreteness to that, I will just provide 2 examples. Right now, we have 2 locations where somehow people are returning more to the office or more to the client, and is due mainly to a different set of pandemic restrictions that are Greater China and Australia and New Zealand. There we see that they are opening up more than other locations. In that, it has been key really to enable the leaders of BCG, the managing director of partners, really to train them on how to have an informed discussion at the beginning of each engagement with the client on which is the best location model for the projects to be carried out. So there was a lot of focus there. In other locations, instead, locations that are fully remote, really there has been instead a big emphasis in really enable full digital collaborations while nobody is really located in the same place. Just to give a sense of different priorities at the regional level. In terms of who are the performance coaches, I find this question a great question, because I would say between 90 and 95% of our performance coaches are actually part of the client-facing staff of BCG that temporarily for 3-4 months are taken out of the track of doing client-facing work, and they are A, trained, and B, deployed to help actually the teams that are used to work on a daily basis. And this is a key point, because when we were testing a lot with external coaches, but we saw that from the feedback that knowing what it means working in a Boston Consulting Group teams was key to be able to really support that team. That's why we made the choice, or actually this rotation model in which client-facing staff is temporarily taken out of track and helping actually teams. Yeah.
So going back to technology, Francesco and Bethany, you talked about your digital collaboration tools as part of your solution to this distributed work and all these different hybrid models that we're facing. Is that a proprietary tool that you use at Boston Consulting Group, or is that is that a technology that's available to the average bear, or how
No,
does that
no,
work?
no, it is not a proprietary tool, but it is actually, I mean, some of the, I mean, the classic tools that are offered by the biggest providers out there. But just elaborating a little bit on that, the important for us is to really offer a suite or a package of tools. Really, a tool that would allow team to stay on the same page, but also to help each other and co-create. I mean, there is a very famous one offered by Microsoft, that is Teams, that all of you know. There are others like Slack, for example, but that is what I refer to when I say a business communication platform. Instead, in terms of a project management platform, also there are several out there. One is Trello, for example, is called, but again, the point there is being able, while people are not co-located, they're able to reprioritize and take decisions together. And the other one is, I mean, SharePoint, Ignite, there are several of there, is just to enable teams to really work with the same document without creating waste. And the key is not really in the specialty of those tools, but rather to enable teams to use them.
Yeah, it's how those tools are being rolled out, and you know, enable the specific BCG methods, you know, that makes the teams really work well.
Yeah, so I think we all might have had those tools before, but many of us sort of shunned them to some extent, partly because we didn't need them. We could just go walk down the hall and chat with our colleagues, right? But we don't have that level of freedom any longer, or right now anyway, I should say. So a lot of people are asking about when you're coming back to the office. I'm not sure there's a really good answer there. And I know one of the questions was about your experience with your employees' experience with iOffice and your IWMS, but my guess is you probably haven't had a lot of experience with it yet, because not really many people are coming back, but maybe I'm wrong. Is that any reactions so far from the reservations and such that people are using with your IWMS and iOffice system, Scott and Rich?
You were on track, Jonathan. We aren't back in office yet and don't intend to be until probably later this year as the vaccine rolls through. But again, we've been testing the system with our group. We have a pretty broad user group within our real estate team. And also the IT folks have partnered with us, as this is, you know, our first enterprise-wide tool that we'll be deploying. So a lot of positive feedback so far, simplicity of use, all that. We have a lot of training materials built for it. So while the system's very intuitive, we hope to have a good educational package as well put together for employees and new hires as we go
Scott,
forward.
maybe you could touch on also the breadth of the tool, what an individual employee anywhere in North America can drill down into any capacity availability for them. And then also how you're integrating now and how well IT is taking to this. I saw one of the other questions with regard to integrating with functions. IT and HR have been latching onto this and really trying to leverage it themselves, right?
Yeah, in the past, we had an IWMS system that was pretty static and just within the facilities group. We used it for move management, space management, what have you. Now that I mentioned enterprise-wide, users are going to have the ability to go on and use this tool as wayfinding at any location. They can travel to any site, use any location, reserve space there. It's just going to be very powerful. In respect to working with IT, for me, it's always been a challenge, but they have their ways of doing things and we have ours. But this has been actually a pretty seamless process where we partnered well, and they've embraced it and they like it. They're interested in it, and you know they want to put their 2 cents in it and put their stamp on it as well. So we have very strong partnership with IT from the top of their organization down to the support level for the implementation and ongoing user support and tech support. So it's been a good partnership. HR as well. I think that they're impressed with what it can do, and integrating their tools they use, the Workday and PeopleSoft, and being able to utilize those systems for automatic updates has been great. And the integration with that has been pretty seamless for the most part, I should say as well.
Great, thanks. See a lot of other good questions. Unfortunately, just about out of time, but I did one question that struck me because I'm curious about this. Before this pandemic, I kind of joked that the employee experience was getting so engaged with employees that we're going to start offering foot massages at lunchtime kind of thing. With people now we're working more remotely, do you think will we need, and this is both for both folks here, do you think we'll need more or less amenities? Because if I'm not going to go spending my day at the office day in and day out, do I really need foot massages and yoga rooms and timeout rooms and all all that, or am I just going to come in, do my thing, and maybe bail out, and maybe we don't need to have quite as much of this, for lack of a better word, coddling of the employees to keep them all happy? Any thoughts on that?
Well, my personal feeling is that what we need more of is just the places to gather and the things that will really be great magnets for people to come back to the office. And it doesn't, a lot of those things, foot massage or whatever, you can get at home and probably in the privacy of your own home. But I think that the things that really bring people together are the key. So for us, we design our amenity spaces around a social heart to the space, which is, some of you have seen in Boston, we have a barista. That's really a place, because it's the social thing that people are missing. I think more than, I can do yoga in my home office very easily. So I think that it's not about the bells and whistles. It's really about what's the fundamental need that your culture has to bring people together, and why would people come to the office? And that's going to be different for every organization, but interrogating what that is and how your people work, and supporting that, and as compared to throwing food at people and things like that, I think is really what's going to make people use the office well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I always felt like amenities were overplayed anyway. So I think as long as the employees know in this environment, they're not sure what companies are doing. As long as now they know from us, we heard you, we had surveys out, we know that you enjoy working remote, but we also know that you would like to have a workspace. The fact that they're being heard and that we're trying to address their needs for them to be comfortable and productive without going over the top, I think is really a win. And so far, I think we've been able to communicate that.
I think they're leaving a quote. It was from the Egyptian times, and it says petitioner more often wants to be heard than to be responded to. So that's like those surveys are gathering that feedback, and everybody feels like, hey, at least I have a voice at the table. Someone's listening. I may not get everything I want, but someone's at least asking the question. So, well, sadly, we're out of time, unfortunately. Thanks to everybody who attended. Thanks to the panel, which you all were great, and the information you brought was really wonderful. I think we all got a lot out of this. And I would just say to everybody on the call, we'll stay tuned, and we're going to be bringing more, especially we talk some of the other dimensions of change management, for example, of how do you go from where we were to where we want to be, and getting to that, going along that process, which so it's a continuous journey, as as Rich and Scott have talked about, and Bethany and Francesco are in the next stage of their journey, and we look forward to hearing more about it as time goes on. So thanks again, everybody, for participating and joining. There is a recording going on. I think you get a link to it later. You can probably share with friends and family and your cats and your dogs. So anyway, stay well, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.